What happens when a CEO shows up to help open a new store? And no one knows it's him. Zayden Grant stood outside the glass doors of the new retail location, tucked into a busy strip mall in the edge of town. It was the 7th store he'd opened since buying the small chain 5 years ago. The growth had been fast, maybe too fast. Lately, feedback from district reports felt filtered, too polished. And after a rushed hiring process at this new store, something in his gut told him to get closer. He pulled down the brim of his gray cap and adjusted the fake reading glasses on his nose. The beard helped. He looked nothing like the photos on the company website, and no one at this location had ever met him anyway. Every hire had been done by the district manager, and Zayden had intentionally stayed out of the loop to keep the disguise clean. On paper, he was Kyle, a new trainee transferred from Store 4. He pushed the door open at 5:57 a.m. Inside, the lights were half on. Boxes were scattered across the floor. A couple of workers were already unpacking, trying to beat the clock before the 7 a.m. opening. A tall woman with tight braids and a clipboard barked orders from behind the counter. "You new guy," she snapped without looking up. "Yeah," Zayden offered a small smile. "Kyle transferred in." "Great," she muttered. "You're on register too, don't mess it up." "I don't have time to babysit." She didn't introduce herself, but her name tag read, Supervisor Tamara. Zayden nodded and got to work, helping another employee named Denny sort through inventory and stock shelves. Denny looked about 19, nervous but polite. He kept glancing at the clock. "First store opening?" Zayden asked. "Yeah," Denny said, stacking socks. "It's been chaos. We're short 2 people this week. One quit and the other got fired for being late 3 times. Harsh." "Yeah, Tamara doesn't play around." Over the next hour, Zayden observed quietly. Tamara ran a tight operation, but it was fear, not respect, that kept people moving. When an older cashier named Rosa fumbled with the register during setup, Tamara muttered loud enough for everyone to hear, "Someone get her a calculator before she costs us another 20. Rosa's face fell, but she said nothing. By 7:05 a.m., customers were already trickling in. The pace picked up fast. Zayden took his place behind register 2, punching in sales and watching the flow. There were no breaks scheduled. No one rotated off register. The energy felt tense. At 9:30, Denny whispered, "I think I'm short $1. I counted the drawer twice." Zayden glanced over. "Could be a miscount. You double-check." "Yeah, still short." Before Zayden could say anything, Tamara appeared behind them like a shadow. "What did I tell you about balancing?" she hissed. I think I miscounted during the rush," Denny stammered. "No excuses," she snapped. "That's a $5 fine. Write it down in the log." Zayden frowned. "Wait, you're fining him?" Tamara turned to him. "Company policy, short drawer, $5 fine. It goes in the binder, keeps people accountable." Zayden blinked. "I've worked at 2 other stores." "Never heard of that." She narrowed her eyes. "It's store-level enforcement, approved by district." Zayden didn't say anything else, but his pulse started to rise. It wasn't just Denny. 15 minutes later, Rosa looked pale as she pulled Tamara aside and whispered something. Zayden leaned in just enough to hear. "Only short 75 cents, but I'll bring it in tomorrow." Tamara didn't blink. "Still a fine, you know the rule." Zayden watched Rosa nod, voice shaking. "Yes, ma'am." The binder, he spotted it finally. A thick red folder under the counter, labeled Cash Discrepancy Log. Inside, lines of employee names, dates, and dollar amounts. Some were as small as 40 cents. Zayden clenched his jaw. Nothing in company policy allowed for fines, especially not ones enforced in cash without HR documentation. He took a break only after Tamara left the floor to make a call. Denny joined him in the back room, biting into a granola bar. "That fine thing," Zayden started. "Does that happen a lot?" Denny nodded. "Yeah, been that way since day one. If you're short, even a penny, you pay up." "She says it's to teach discipline. And no one complains. Who would we tell? The district manager's her cousin." Zayden leaned back, heart pounding. He'd come to check on operations. Instead, he'd walked into a system that punished minimum wage workers for register mistakes, most likely unintentional ones. And he wasn't done yet. By noon, the line was out the door. Rosa moved slower than earlier, shoulders slumped. Denny looked like he was trying not to cry. Tamara, meanwhile, barked at everyone to move faster, louder than ever. Zayden waited, kept watching. But inside, something shifted. He hadn't come to blow his cover today. But this couldn't wait forever, not when good people were being fined for doing their best. By early afternoon, the air inside the store had gone heavy. The kind of weight that settles in slowly, too subtle to notice at first, but unmistakable once it's there. Zayden stepped off the register long enough to help restock hangers near the fitting rooms. The shelves were thinning out already. Sales were steady, even strong, but the strain on the team was showing in every movement. Shoulders slumped a little lower. Words came out clipped. No one laughed. As he aligned a row of folded denim, he noticed a girl early 20s, maybe standing inside the fitting room hallway, tapping her pen against a clipboard and glancing at her phone between notes. She wore the same charcoal gray shirt as everyone else, but her demeanor stood apart. Calm, focused. Detached. "Hey," he said, approaching. "You with this store?" She looked up, cautious. "Kind of. I'm float staff from store 2, sent to help with launch week." "First day here." "Second," she said. "I'm Elise." "Kyle," he replied. "You like it here?" She paused, then folded her clipboard against her chest. "It's different." "How so?" "You ever work somewhere where everything looks fine but it doesn't feel fine?" she asked. Zayden nodded once. "Yeah, I've seen that. People don't talk much here, not unless they have to. Managers usually set the tone, and Tamara, she's not wrong about everything, but the energy's off. People move like they're one mistake from a write-up." Zayden gestured toward the front. "That bad?" "I've only been here 2 days," Elise said. "And I've seen more people cry in the break room than I did in 6 months at my home store." That stuck with him. Elise didn't seem like someone prone to drama. She was precise, measured, the kind of person who noticed details and didn't speak unless she had something worth saying. A customer called from a nearby aisle and Elise returned to folding. Zayden headed back to the front. At register 1, Rosa was finishing a transaction with a middle-aged man who looked confused. "No, I said I gave you a 20, the man insisted. "Not a 10. "I'm sorry, sir," Rosa said, her voice shaking. "It rang up as 10. "I know what I gave you," he snapped. "You're not listening." Zayden stepped in. "Let me take a look." Rosa stepped aside, visibly distressed. Zayden opened the drawer, cross-checked the bills, and checked the register log. The till balance lined up with Rosa's version. The man had given a 10, but the damage was done. His voice had risen enough to draw looks from customers nearby. Tamara emerged from the back like she'd been waiting for a cue. "What's going on?" "Customer thought he gave a 20, Zayden explained. "But it was a 10, register confirms it." Tamara turned to Rosa. Again, Rosa tried to speak, but Tamara cut her off. "Go to the back." "I'll finish your shift." "No, it's okay," Rosa started. "I said go," Tamara repeated, her tone sharp. Zayden watched Rosa walk away, her hands trembling slightly. As the customer left, still muttering, Tamara leaned toward him. "If you cover for her again, we'll have a problem." "I wasn't covering," he said evenly. "I checked the drawer. She's a sweet lady, but she's slow, and she costs us more than she brings in." Zayden kept his voice steady. "She didn't do anything wrong." Tamara shook her head. "This is retail. We don't have the luxury of patience." Zayden didn't respond. His hands were tight against the countertop. By 3 o'clock, Elise pulled him aside again. "There's a situation in the back," she said quietly. Zayden followed her behind the stockroom door, where Rosa sat on a stool, holding a tissue to her eyes. Her shoulders shook as she tried to keep silent. "I'm not trying to make trouble," Rosa said. I needed this job. I didn't mean to mess up." "You didn't," Zayden said gently. "She's been after me ever since I asked for shorter shifts. My knees aren't what they used to be, but she said if I can't keep up, I should leave." Zayden glanced at Elise. She nodded, jaw set. He crouched beside Rosa. "Do you have any write-ups?" "No, just warnings, verbal stuff." Nothing on paper. Okay, he stood, turned to Elise. Can you get her a bottle of water and let her sit in the office for a bit? I'll cover. Elise nodded and led Rosa into the small back office, closing the door gently behind them. When Zayden stepped back onto the floor, Tamara was pacing near Register 3, clipboard in hand. She didn't look up. I sent Rosa home, he said. Tamara didn't miss a beat. Fine, she's not cut out for fast-paced retail. She didn't do anything wrong, she's a liability. He stepped closer. You ever put that in writing? What's your angle? She asked, eyes narrowing. No angle, just wondering how you're documenting all these liabilities. Tamara stared at him for a beat too long, then turned and walked off without a word. The store didn't slow down. If anything, the late afternoon wave brought more customers and more pressure. Elise returned to the front to help, while Denny handled returns with visible anxiety. At 4:15, a woman in her 40s, wearing a red sweater and pushing a stroller, asked to speak to a manager. Tamara arrived within minutes. The customer pointed toward a small display of clearance items. I asked the young man there if he could check the price on that blouse, and he just shrugged and walked away, didn't say a word. Which one? Tamara asked. She pointed toward Denny. Zayden stepped forward. I was nearby. He didn't walk away. He told her he was checking with someone and went to the back. Tamara's voice dropped. That's not what she said. I was standing right there. Tamara turned to the customer. I apologize, we'll address it. Please let me find someone to help you. Once the woman walked away, Tamara spun on Denny. Off the floor now. Zayden stepped between them. He's done nothing wrong. Tamara's brow furrowed. You're out of line. No, he said, his voice low but firm. You are. She crossed her arms. You're a trainee. Back off. Zayden took a breath, pulled out his wallet, and flipped it open just enough to show the company ID card tucked inside, embossed with his full name and title. Not exactly. Her face changed in an instant. What? I'm Zayden Grant, he said. Owner, founder. The reason this store exists. Tamara opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Let's make something clear, he continued. There is no fine binder. There is no policy allowing cash penalties. There is no tolerance for mistreatment, intimidation, or harassment, verbal or otherwise. She tried to speak again. You were enforcing personal rules for cash fines. You publicly humiliated staff. You threatened jobs without documentation. And you did it all under the assumption no one was watching. She blinked, still grasping for a foothold. The district manager will be hearing from me directly, Zayden said. Effective immediately, you're relieved of all duties. You'll be escorted off premises. HR will be in contact regarding next steps. Tamara's mouth tightened. She didn't argue, just turned and walked to the back office without another word. Zayden didn't move until she was gone. The store was quiet. Staff had gathered loosely near the front, watching. He turned to them. I'm sorry for what you've been dealing with. That's not who we are. It's not what this company stands for. No one spoke at first. Then Elise stepped forward. What happens now, we fix it, Zayden said. Starting tonight. Zayden stood near the front counter, sleeves rolled up, watching the last customer exit through the sliding doors. The overhead lights, still bright, now felt clinical against the silence that had taken over the space. The crew was frozen in place, unsure of what to do next. Some stared at him, others looked at the floor, waiting for a cue. He turned to Elise, who stood just to his left, arms crossed, eyes steady. Can you call in any available floaters from store 2 or 3, just for the evening shift, he asked quietly. Already on it, she said. 2 are on the way, should be here in 20 minutes. Zayden gave a short nod. Thank you. He walked back behind the register and picked up the red binder. The pages inside were filled with names, dollar amounts, and initials. He flipped to the first page and ran his thumb across the entries. It dated back almost 2 months, meaning this system had been in place at more than just this store. He tucked the binder under his arm and turned toward the team. I know you're all probably wondering what happens now, he said. We're not going to pretend this didn't happen. And I'm not going to ask you to just move on like today was normal. He walked slowly across the floor, making eye contact with each person. "We're going to stay open tonight, but only because I'm staying with you, and no one's staying late unless they choose to. We'll rotate so people can rest. Tomorrow, we'll bring in support from other stores. You will not be short-staffed again." Rosa stepped out from the back hallway, still wiping the corners of her eyes, her expression guarded. Zayden met her halfway. "No one should have spoken to you the way you were spoken to today," he said. "If you're willing, I'd like you to stay on, but on your terms, we'll adjust your hours however you need." Rosa looked at him for a long moment. "I just want to do my job. I didn't want to cause a scene." "You didn't," he said. "You showed up. That's what matters." She nodded once, then quietly walked back to stand near the returns counter. Zayden turned to Denny next. "I checked the drawer myself," he said. "You weren't short. The transaction log was off by a scan, not the cash." Denny blinked. "So the fine, it never should have happened. You'll be reimbursed. Everyone will." One of the floor associates, a young woman with short curls and a name tag that said Janny, stepped forward. "We've had to pay cash for things we didn't even understand sometimes. Like if we forgot to clock out for lunch or if we left a card out." Zayden's jaw tightened. "How often?" "Once a week at least, sometimes more." He looked around. A few heads nodded silently. Zayden turned to Elise. "Do we have a clean ledger system at store 2? Every transaction is digital," she said. "Nothing's tracked in cash, and there's an HR rep assigned to every discrepancy over $2. That's how it's supposed to be," he said. "We're reverting this store to digital protocols effective immediately. No more physical fine logs, no more off-the-books deductions, and no more threats." He walked to the office door and entered alone. Inside, the air felt heavier. On the desk sat a stack of shift schedules and a small cardboard box of receipts. Zayden unlocked the bottom drawer and found a petty cash envelope. It was labeled Adjustments. Inside, over $200 in small bills, with notes like Rosa 3/12 and Denny 3/18 scribbled beside them. He took the envelope and walked back out, holding it up for everyone to see. "This," he said, "is what accountability looks like when it goes bad. Every person who's had money taken from them illegally will get it back." "Tonight," he set the envelope on the counter and pulled out the first few bills. "Janny, how much?" $7.50, she said, voice low. He handed her a 10. "Keep the extra, that's not a tip. It's overdue respect." She stared at the bill, eyes wide, then took it with trembling fingers. He continued down the list. Denny, Rosa, 2 others. Each time he handed back more than they had lost. There was no applause, no one cheered. It wasn't that kind of moment, but something shifted in the room, an invisible weight lifted. As the floaters from store 2 arrived, Zayden met them by the front door and gave a quick rundown. "We're stabilizing tonight, nothing fancy, just kindness and effort. Pair up with someone from this team and follow their lead." The rest of the night passed in measured rhythm. Zayden stayed on Register 3, never taking his eyes off the operations. Elise took over shift coordination, checking in every 30 minutes and adjusting based on flow. Rosa returned to folding near the front. Denny moved back to the fitting rooms, visibly more relaxed now that the tension behind the counter had eased. At one point, a regular customer came in with her daughter and struck up a conversation with Janny about school uniforms. The laughter that followed wasn't loud, but it was real. Zayden stepped into the back room just after 8 and pulled out his phone. He dialed the district manager's number. "Yeah, Miles, it's Zayden." A pause. "I heard you were at the new store. Everything okay?" "No," Zayden said. "I just removed Tamara from her position. And I'm holding you responsible." "Wait, what?" "She's been running that location exactly how we discussed, strict but effective. You co-signed cash fines, you allowed undocumented write-ups, you ignored staffing requests and created a culture of fear." Miles hesitated. "It wasn't fear. It was structure. Structure doesn't involve stealing wages." A long silence. "I'll come in tomorrow, we can talk." "You won't need to, HR will be contacting you. You're being suspended pending investigation." If even half of what I found today traces back to you, you're done." Zayden ended the call without waiting for a response. He returned to the floor and found Elise by the sweater display, refolding a stack that had been knocked over during the dinner rush. "Store 2's lucky to have you," he said. She glanced up. "I didn't do anything special." "You told the truth even when it was inconvenient, that's rare." She didn't respond, just nodded once, then returned to folding. At closing, Zayden gathered the team near the front. "We're rebuilding from here. Starting tomorrow, we'll bring in a proper store manager, one who earns your respect, not demands it. Over the next week, I'll be here every day until things are stable." He looked at each of them. "And if anyone ever asks you to pay out of pocket again or threatens you for speaking up my direct line, will be posted in the break room." Rosa shifted her stance. "You're really staying?" "I'm not going anywhere until this place becomes what it should have been from the start." No one needed to say anything else. They dispersed slowly, each person closing out their section with more care than before. It wasn't celebration, but it was healing. Not loud, not fast, but honest. And for the first time all day, the silence in the store didn't feel heavy, it felt earned. By the next morning, the shift began with a different kind of tension, quiet, alert, and ready. Everyone showed up on time, but no one rushed. The pace had slowed just enough to make space for thought. Elise was already in the back room at 6:30, organizing the revised schedule Zayden drafted the night before. With Tamara gone and the district manager suspended pending review, the entire chain of command had been stripped down to something raw and temporary. Zayden stood near the front window, sipping black coffee from a paper cup. He'd slept only a few hours in a local motel, still in his jeans from yesterday. But his mind was clearer than it had been in weeks. He'd read every employee file from the new store by sunrise, and two things were immediately obvious. Half the team had been barely trained, and the other half had been quietly teaching themselves how to survive. By 7, customers were already forming a modest line outside. Elise approached, holding a clipboard filled with shift notes. "We're still short 2 people for the afternoon," she said. "I've got Mallory from store 4 driving in, but she won't be here until noon. Any call-ins?" "No, everyone's in." "Denny offered to stay through lunch if he can rotate to the back around 2. Zayden nodded. "Make sure he gets at least 20 minutes off his feet. He's not a robot. I'll handle it." He looked at her for a second. "You ever consider management?" She paused. "Not here." "Not how it's been." "I'm asking for the future. Clean slate." She didn't answer immediately, just tapped the clipboard once. "Let's get through today first." The doors opened at 7 on the dot. This time, no shouting, no clipboard snapping, no threats. Just the sound of drawers opening, hangers sliding, and the quiet hum of people doing their jobs without fear. By late morning, a man in a navy suit arrived with a neutral expression and a leather folio tucked under one arm. He introduced himself to Zayden as Anthony, Mark's interim HR investigator from corporate, flown in from the city overnight. "You've already confirmed the cash log," Anthony said, flipping open the folio. "But we may be looking at broader issues if this was happening across multiple locations." "It was," Zayden said. "Elise can give you names of others who have floated between stores. Start with store 3, I'm betting you'll find similar patterns." Anthony made a note. "We'll begin interviews by end of day. Anyone who enforced off-policy deductions will be placed on administrative leave immediately." "Good," Zayden said. Anthony lowered his voice. "There's a deeper issue here. The district manager's hiring practices. He was bypassing our background checks. We found at least one supervisor who'd been terminated from a different retailer for discrimination claims last year." Zayden's jaw twitched. "Send me that file. I want it on my desk before the end of the week." Anthony nodded once and left to begin the internal interviews. Back on the floor, Rosa was at the front folding table, sorting a new shipment of scarves. She worked slower than the others, but every item was folded sharp, precise. Zayden watched her for a second before approaching. "You feel okay today?" he asked. She didn't look up. More than okay. I almost quit last week, told my daughter I couldn't do another month of being treated like I was invisible. You're not invisible, he said. Not anymore, she looked at him then. You really mean to fix this place, all of it, he said. Not just this store. She nodded once and returned to folding. By midday, Mallory arrived from store 4, upbeat and focused. She'd been one of the first hires when Zayden bought the chain, and her energy was careful but infectious. She immediately took over a section near the accessories rack and began reworking a display without being asked. Elise noticed, walked over, and the two started a quiet exchange about optimal product flow. It wasn't long before they were working in sync like they'd done it for years. At 3:30, Anthony returned with a list of findings. He pulled Zayden into the back room and closed the door. We've confirmed it, he said. The fine system was in place at 3 locations. Tamara was the worst example, but 2 other supervisors had similar logs, smaller amounts, but same method. All off book, all unauthorized. Zayden folded his arms. How many employees affected? 42. Total estimate of collected fines, just under $3,000. Zayden didn't blink. Write the checks. Add a $500 goodwill bonus to each, and make sure they know it's not from the company, it's from me. Anthony nodded. I'll coordinate with payroll. One more thing, Zayden added. I want real-time feedback implemented store-wide, QR code at every register. Direct line to my office, no filters. That's a heavy lift. I'll fund it myself. Anthony didn't argue when Zayden returned to the sales floor. The afternoon had picked up. The line was steady but manageable. Elise walked over, rubbing her shoulder lightly. We've got a customer who's asking about a price match, she said. Says the sweater's cheaper online. Let me talk to him. They approached a man near the back wall holding a navy pullover. I just saw this for $18 online, the man said. Tag says $25, Zayden scanned the barcode. You're right, price match it. The man blinked. That easy, we're rebuilding trust, Zayden said. Starts with believing people. The man smiled slightly and walked to the register. Elise raised an eyebrow. You always that flexible? Only when I'm watching closely, he said. Which I plan to be a lot more often. By the time closing rolled around, the store looked different, not in layout, not in lighting, but in posture. People moved with less hesitation. Conversations happened without glances over shoulders. Even Denny, who'd stayed past his shift to help with backstock, cracked a joke loud enough for others to hear. Zayden gathered the team near the front table just after the last customer left. You've been through a lot, he said. More than any team should, but you've stayed, you've worked, you've helped each other. He took out a small stack of envelopes and placed them on the table. These are employee appreciation bonuses, small but deserved. You'll each get one tonight. And starting next week, every store will have a formal check-in system. Anonymous feedback, scheduled roundtables, and a rotating staff advocate. No more waiting for someone to notice when things go wrong. No one clapped. No one needed to. Rosa stepped forward. You staying tomorrow? I'll be here, he said. But not on the register. We've got someone new starting. Her name's Camille, former manager from a cooperative retail chain. She believes in shared leadership. Elise raised an eyebrow. You're replacing Tamara with someone from outside the company. I'm building a new standard, he said. She's the start. Elise crossed her arms. And what about me? Zayden smiled, but not with his mouth, with the quiet shift in his expression. I'd like you to be her assistant manager. If you're ready. I'll think about it, she said. Good, he replied. But don't take too long, we've got work to do. As the team packed up, dimming lights and locking drawers, Zayden lingered at the front window. Outside, the city buzzed like it always did, but inside, something had changed. And not just here. The shockwave would move through every store, every policy, every corner that had gone too long without light. He didn't feel proud. He felt responsible, and that was exactly where he needed to be.